Well, I'll tell you. First of all, he was a super intense person and really demanding, and it could be a bit much for some people, quite honestly. And I think it was a bit much for me at first, but at the same time, I also recognized that when he picked up his instruments, he was really good, and that was the thing that sort of that pulled me, because I was like, even if I think he's too pushy and he's really hard, he was really good, and I wanted to be good.
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine. Thanks so much for following us on our social media, subscribing here on YouTube, and hanging with us on a regular basis, because we really enjoy bringing you a diverse group of musicians and talented individuals who are creatives. And today we have an amazing, amazing individual with us. Now, full disclosure, we have not been in the same room since we were in, I don't know, I can't count that high. It's been a while, but we grew up in the same area. He has been an inspiration for many and got actually one of the reasons why I started in music long time ago. You may or may not know him. You've probably heard his music though, right? He's a Grammy-nominated musical producer, a composer, music director for Sergio Mendes, an arranger, singer, saxophonist, flutist, recording artist. He's performed with Beyonce, Paul McCartney, Bruce Springsteen, Bruno Mars, Jay-Z, Mick Jagger, Dr. Dre, Lizzo, Stevie Wonder. We don't have enough time to cover them all. He is also a Rochester Music Hall of Famer. I'd love to introduce you right now, everyone, Scott Mayo, and welcome to the Scott and Scott Show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Did I miss anything? Did I miss any good credits that I should have?
No, it's great. It's funny. Like, it's just so weird to hear that, because I never take time to take an account of my career. So being inducted into the Hall of Fame, for example, I had to stop and sit there and watch that 10-minute film that they did on me. And I'm like, wow, like I've done some stuff. And I never think about that. And it also was like, because I was home. And so just being in the ground of Rochester, New York, this just really made me like have a perspective that I don't normally have, because I'm always so busy working that I never stop to think. And so it's pretty weird to hear all those names attached to me.
It's interesting, because I had a similar experience. I received an award from RIT at one time, and you never, you and I think work at the same pace, pretty quick and forward, not in reverse. Yeah. And it's amazing when you're forced to stop and take in a moment like that.
Yep.
It provides perspective. Where I usually start is going back to the beginning, because I really enjoy learning people's origin story and how they got into their creativity. So let's go back to the early days in Henrietta, New York. Mm-hmm. And when you first decided that this was something that music was something that meant something to you, did you find music, or did music find you?
I feel like music found me. I was born in Elmira, New York, down on the Pennsylvania-New York state border. And I was in fourth grade, and there was an announcement that if you're in fourth grade and above, you can be in the band. So if that's something you're interested in, come by the band room at the end of school. And it was like a call. I couldn't get it out of my head all day long. I couldn't wait to go to the band room. So I went to the band room after school, and he said, well, you have to go home and ask your parents what what instrument you want to play. And so I asked my mom, I said, well, I want to be in the band. She said, what do you want to play? I said, drums. She said, it's too loud. Pick something else. I said, trumpet. She said, too loud. Pick something else. I said, guitar. She said, why do you keep picking the loud instruments? She said, I tell you what, we got a clarinet here because both of your brothers played clarinet and quit. So you're going to play clarinet. I'm not buying another instrument. So that was my destiny. So my mother, because everything was too loud, wanted me to play a clarinet.
That's awesome. Same thing. I tried for drums, and it's too loud, and then I ended up on trumpet, and my mother's like, make sure the windows are closed so the neighbors don't hear.
So that sort of started it. So then when we moved to Rochester, I still sort of stayed in the band. And a couple years after I played clarinet, I wanted to play saxophone. So my parents bought me a saxophone. Then a couple years after that, and I'm totally dating myself, I heard this song on the radio called The Hustle. and it had a flute in it. And so I wanted to play flute so I could learn how to play the hustle, and I still know how to play it to this day.
Careful, buddy. I see one over your shoulder. We may have to get impromptu here. So the hustle, yeah.
The thing is, so that sort of started it. And so by the time I was kind of in junior high school, I could already play all three instruments. I don't know how good I was, but I could play all three. And then when I went to high school, then I really got some real teaching from Roger Eckers, and then that really put me on track. But yeah, it sort of started. I really feel like music found me more so than I found music.
No, that's great. It's always amazing to dive into that because it's this magical thing that impacts people differently. The sound waves coming out of a speaker are all the same, right? Mm-hmm. They're all just waves of energy. But how that energy transforms into your body and moves you in a direction affects people so differently. So I always like to kind of start there and figure out. Yeah. You know, you mentioned a gentleman, Roger Eckers. Mm-hmm. Who, you know, again, full disclosure to everybody, he was Scott's band director, and he was Scott's band director. Let's talk into that, because I'm going to go out on a limb. I think he had different impacts on us and how we pursued things. But what was that like for you, Roger's tutelage and his encouragement?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, first of all, he was a super intense person and really demanding. And it could be a bit much for some people, quite honestly. And I think it was a bit much for me at first. But at the same time, I also recognized that when he picked up his instruments, he was really good. And that was the thing that pulled me, because I was like, even if I think he's too pushy and he's really hard, he was really good. And I wanted to be good. So in order for me to be good, I had to sort of endure his regimen of just being really disciplined about playing the instruments, because he was really good. And so I got past that and just recognized the fact that this guy is a gift for me. And like, I think around my sophomore year was when I started to get kind of serious about this music thing and really start to pay attention to him. And it changed everything, really changed everything. I mean, he prepared me so well that when I graduated high school, I actually didn't need to go to music. I mean, I didn't need to go to college. I literally could have gone to Broadway and started making a living as a woodwind player. I was that prepared. Not that I was that good, but I was that prepared. He had me play all the flutes, all the clarinets, all the saxophones. So I knew how to get around all of those things. And I could read really, really well because of him. So I really didn't have to go to college to make a living. I was already prepared. So he totally changed my life. Totally.
Yeah, you know, I think in my relationship with him, I tend to push back a little harder. So when you get in a situation like that, I was always questioning, right? And I think what happened is I received the same kind of that moment when you realize his intensity is all for good. I think I received it a little later though, and I channeled it into some other things other than just the music, right? Because I fiddle around with music still, you know, guitars and piano and stuff, but I'm certainly not at a level other than sounding good after a couple of alcoholic beverages. Right. So, but no, he had that way, and he touched so many people because when he took an interest in your success, he was dead serious about it.
Yeah. Yep.
And he was gonna latch onto you more than you even may have latched onto him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the things that, you know, when you think about something, because he's no longer with us, that's one of the things that always sticks with me, and it gives me an energy to push because he's always back over there, right? Oh, yeah. He's always over your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we grew to become friends after that. As an adult, we became very close friends. We would talk on the phone at least once a week. Literally, we talked on the phone all the time. And every time I'd come home, we'd always get together and hang and play. But he was really great in that he, I think, really prepared me for being an adult musician, having a life of balance. Because he did talk to me about that. You have to have a life of balance. You can't be a weird music guy. It's like, oh, I got a song, I have to have a sheet of paper, I've got to write. He said, don't be like that. That's just weird. You know, have some balance. Know when to, you know, too much of anything is probably not good. And so he really helped, like, I think really shape who I became as a human, not just as a musician. He really helped me, you know, have a real good foundation of how to live a successful life, honestly.
Well, and you have been successful. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I was gonna follow up, and you've always kind of already answered. I think my question is that it sounds like he gave you that and you've been able to take him in that with you throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a gift that we
absolutely.
don't realize. We tend not to realize when people are with us, the gift they give us. Unfortunately, it's usually after they're no longer with us.
Well, but that was one thing that I felt blessed in, that our relationship was so valid that I had a chance several times to sit him down and thank him to his face for specific things. Like, it wasn't just, so you were a great teacher. No, I thanked him for very specific things. And so he always knew how I felt about him. And he then would tell me how he felt about me. So our relationship, as I said, we became very close friends to the end. We were very, very close friends. And so I just appreciate that I was able to tell him numerous times how significant he was and how important he was to my life.
Yeah, it's amazing because we're going through a time when music and arts programs are diminishing in size and scope in schools. And, you can go through school and have 4 different science teachers, 4 different math teachers. You typically have 1 band director. And the impact that it has, on an individual who's learning from them, I think is much more, it's longer lasting. Yeah. And it's unfortunate we don't have as many programs like that these days, because I think those people tend to have the biggest impact.
Yeah. And I mean, and not to get off on a tangent about the significance of the arts and music in specific, but I think one of the things that happens, and the reason we make those connections with our band teachers many times, even if we don't go on to pursue it as a profession, is to do music, you really do have to get, no matter, even at the high school level, you have to get in touch with the inner person and what's important and what motivates you and how do you get a good sound and how do you blend with other people, and all of those things happen. So the connection you make with your teacher, many times they are connecting with your inner self. And so it's different than a science teacher, because a science teacher tends to say superficial. Whereas the art teachers tend to get inside the soul of the student. And so there's a different kind of a connection that you make as an art teacher. You just do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned you had an opportunity, you could have just, packed up, gone to Broadway. What's a guy from Western New York? How do you go from there to LA? What's the story there? How did that happen?
Well, I went to school, University of Michigan, to the School of Music, and I studied with an incredible saxophone professor named Donald Cinta. And from there was an audition to play at the All-American College Marching Band at Disneyland. And I got the audition, and I liked LA so much that I decided to stay. And so I just stayed in LA with 0 plans. I had no idea how to make a living. So I dropped out of college and I moved to LA, and I literally took my saxophone everywhere. I took my saxophone everywhere, always ready to play, to sit in with everybody. And eventually my name started to sort of get out there. But it was really Disneyland that brought me to LA.
Huh. So after Disneyland, for everybody, you just mentioned you got a chance to play here and there and sit in. What was that I've arrived gig for you? Like that when that first gig that you're like, hey, maybe I made a little money, I really enjoyed it, and now I'm here and I know this is for me.
My first big, I think, tour. It was a tour. My ex-wife Valerie is a singer. She still is a singer. She's very good, but she got a record deal, and so the group was called Chapter 8. So that moved us to be in LA. And her producer became very famous. He started producing Anita Baker's first album. And so I'm on that first album. And she said, hey, do you want to do my tour? And I'm like, what's a tour? I'm from Rochester. I don't know what a tour is. I've never heard of a tour. I don't know. So the engineer sat me down and he told me what a tour was. And he told me how to behave. Literally, he told me how to behave. And so I did her tour. And it was that Anita Baker tour, the Rapture tour, from her first huge record. And that was the thing where now I'm the youngest guy in the band, and I'm around all of these sort of legends. Sheila E.'s father, Peter, was the percussionist and took me under his wing and introduced me to everybody and told me about the music business. And that was really sort of a game changer in my career. From that point in time, when I came back in town, all of a sudden people started treating me differently because I was on that hot tour. So therefore, I must be somebody. So people started hiring me. And then as her producer, Michael, started to do more and more records, he would always call me in to either sing or play. So I was doing a lot of sessions that he was producing. And those sessions beget other sessions. And in LA at the time, if you, I would end up doing 4 and 5 sessions at the same studio because I would take a break and I'd have my saxophone strap on and someone's like, hey, you a sax player? Like, yeah. Hey, when you're done, come on down to room B. So I would go down to room B and I'd be on a totally different record. And so there's one day I did a bluegrass session, a Kenny Loggins session, a Luther Vandross session, and a Temptation session, all the same day, just because I had a saxophone. And I, at this point, forget what the actual call was. I don't know who called.
All I can think of is like a scene out of The Office in the coffee room where one of the characters is like pulled to every different desk in the office all day long. Did you even get contracts signed before you walked into those sessions?
No, not at all. It was like the Wild West. You just walked in and played, and then you talked about it afterwards. It was amazing.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, we're going to go in a different direction. I had a good follow-up, but I want to ride this one. You know, you think about those days when that could happen. Mm-hmm. And then you think about where we are now. Mm-hmm. You can, in woodwind especially, you can, you know, be stuck in a studio somewhere and never have to hire anybody because you can recreate it digitally.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the differences you've seen and ways that you've overcome not being replaced musically because of how you do what you do, your sound and your professionality? Because I think that's important for people to learn from, right? Because we have made this leap into where technology is starting to make some inroads and affecting musicians.
I mean, I think the first and foremost thing is that you have to give yourself permission to just be yourself. You know, and a lot of us, and unfortunately, this is what I see here in LA, just from my perspective. I see a lot of musicians that come out here and feel that they have to fit in. And in order to fit in, they sort of homogenize their sound and their approach. And all of a sudden, they have no more personality. And when that happens, well, why should I hire you versus hiring anybody else? There's no difference. It's just a flute, and anybody can play flute. I need a flute with a personality. And so for me, what has worked for me is I've always maintained my voice. I've always been who I am. And I don't sound sort of homogenized. And that has worked for me. People hire me because they want me. They don't want a random flute player. They can get anybody to play flute, but they want me to do my thing because I have little stuff that I do. And they like that. So my advice is just be who you are and don't feel like you have to fit in. Just be who you are and you'll fit in time.
Oh, that's great. Great advice. I'm curious because going back to the, you know, you being in the break room and getting pulled into all these, this whole variety of different genres of sessions, the music that you've been on, I mean, you've crossed so many different genres, but when you just want to play for you, do you have like one style of music that's like your tomato soup and grilled cheese comfort food that you just want to go and enjoy because you do it for yourself, not because it's the work of the business?
I don't know. Like I mean, I started out as a straight ahead jazz musician at home. You know, that was what I did, you know, and I went to school for classical music and I became that. So at my core, if I just want to just chill and listen to music, I'm going to listen to straight ahead jazz because I just love it. I don't play it as much as I used to. So part of the problem for me with straight ahead is that I don't have a physical connection to the music anymore. And so I feel sort of out of sorts. But if I could play that all the time, I'd be fine. If I had a whole bunch of money and I could just play jazz, because I'm not going to make a lot of money playing it, but I would love to play it all the time if I could.
You know, look, of all the genres out there, I think jazz is the one you play for love.
Yeah.
Right? You play for love.
But the thing is, for me, what all the commercial stuff I do enables me a sort of economic stability to have artistic options. So I can do stuff that I love to do and not have the tie to money. Like I can just do it because I love it, as opposed to doing it like and be depending on those $50 that I'm going to be getting. Like, nope, this music is so important to me that I want to keep it over here and keep it in my love category, and I'll do everything else for money.
No,
that's just me.
No, look, that's a great way of thinking about it. I mean, because for some people, being a professional musician just becomes work, and I've sat down with a few that are like, look, this is just my job. Do I love it anymore? Not really, but it puts a roof over my head.
Yep.
And at one time, I think that that's great that they can, it brings them a financial, but I feel sad that they lost that love and that passion for just doing it.
Yeah. I just recently had a conversation with a friend of mine. Literally, within the last 30 days, I called him up and I said, dude, what are you doing right now? And he just, every time I'm around him, he just is not happy. I don't see smiles. And I'm like, dude, when was the last time you just played music that you liked? And he couldn't even think of anything. And I'm like, there's something wrong with that. Like, we started this wonderful journey because we loved music, whether it was listening to it or playing it, we just loved it. So what happens where it just becomes so much of a job that you lose all connection to the love? And for me, the beauty of this studio for me is that there are times I come down here and I don't have anything to do, and I will sit here and watch a documentary about music, or just sit on the couch behind me and just listen to Mahler because I can, and I think that something is really wrong if you only do music for a job and you've lost the joy. I think it's sad.
Yeah, no, I think it's like they say, too much of any one thing is not good.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Before we move on to some exciting things that have happened to you lately, I'm kind of interested, because of all those genres that you're able to, perform. Who are some of the musical influences that you really drew from between growing up and then becoming professional that help feed your ability to do that, right? Some of whether it's the music you've heard or the musicians that you've learned from, like, what are some of those things that have helped you craft the ability, right? Because there's some people who can only swim in their lane.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
Who are some of that helped you be that multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist who can cross genres that way?
I mean, first of all, it starts with just like a sincere love and interest in music. Like, I love music. I love listening to all kinds of music. So if you were to drive in my car with me, you would think I was schizophrenic. I'm all over the place musically. I mean, I'll listen to The Rite of Spring, and right after that, listen to Ralph Stanley sing some bluegrass. I mean, I'm literally all over the place because I just like good, sincere music. So that's the first thing. But in terms of the style, I started listening to John Coltrane and Charlie Parker and Cannonball Adderley and all my jazz heroes. And then I started listening to Brazilian music with Sergio Mendes and Dodi Caymmi and all of them. And then I started listening to classical music when I went to college. And always growing up in Rochester, you have to know rock and roll and you have to know R&B. That was just part of being in that city growing up at that time. And so I think all of those things sort of prepared me to do this stuff. And then I moved to LA. I started getting into hip hop and I started producing hip hop. And so there was that. And so it's all been, to me, the consistency is that I just love music. And so I just think that if you keep yourself interested, then you become interesting to people. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I still work with young current artists, is because I like their music and I'm genuinely interested in their music. And so I'm not some old guy. They like me around because they know I like the music.
You hit on something. I was actually speaking to someone earlier about this. The word consistency. Mm-hmm. Consistency. Peter Drucker said in business, consistency is the key to all economic success. Mm-hmm. I believe that consistency is the key to any success.
Yeah.
Anything. And that consistency piece, it's always easy to give up. It's always easy to go for the easier, right? So I like what you're saying there, because I think that we also live in a day and age where it is a little easier for people to just give up and move in another direction, where consistency will get you where you want to go.
Well, a lot of, like I find like a lot of this younger generation in particular, I find them to be kind of full of anxiety. And I think a lot of it is rooted in social media, because if all I do is look at all the things that you're doing that I want to do and you seem to be killing in it and I'm not, obviously there's something wrong with me. When in fact, it just may be your season. It's your time to flourish and to do your thing. And my season's going to come maybe next year, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years from now. But I think when you start to compare yourself all the time to all the stuff you see around you, you start to feel like, well, what's wrong with me? How come I'm not successful? And I didn't have that because I didn't see the world. I saw Rochester. And so I saw my friends, and we didn't do major tours and we weren't on TV shows. We just played music. And so I just tried to get good. And so I didn't grow up with that anxiety. And I feel really sad for them because they don't have, I don't know, like they struggle with things like consistency because they don't see the long game. All they see is right now, you're famous and I'm not. What's wrong with me?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, you know, perception is reality. And when all you see is someone else and their, you know, their social feed, and you see that literally that one slice of a moment that you go, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You don't see them crying in the corner the next moment, right?
No,
you don't
I mean,
see the other.
No, and no one's going to post anything that sucks. You're just not going to do that. I don't do that. When I post something of me playing, it's the 15th take and I finally got it. You don't see me in there playing stuff over and over and over and saying, you suck, stop, do it again. You know, you don't see that. You only see when I'm wonderful and I'm killing. So you think, oh my God, Scott's amazing. Is he really though? Really? Because you missed the other 15 takes when he sucked. So...
No, I agree. I mean, you gotta find your own path, and you've got to have that self-assurance that no one's going to take this away from me. I'm going to do it even when somebody says I suck, even when I feel like I failed. You know, in my photography and my filmmaking, the things that I think I did really well have consistently other people don't like. The things that I love, the things that I don't like, people love, and the things that I like, people don't like. I mean, it's been like this crazy thing where I'm like, okay, I put my heart and soul into it, but it means something to me. Do they have to like it, right? But nobody sees that. Nobody sees the time and the effort, the 1,000 hours, if you want to say that, you know, all that stuff. You know, I was going to get to another subject, but you pop something in my head here. And I think it's a good learning moment for people. Music can be hard, right?
Absolutely.
Learning, and especially for someone who's a session musician, right? And you're coming into someone's session and they have their mindset on, this is how I want it, right? They know how they want it. Now, you've got to learn it and either do it the way they want to it, or, and I'm going to coin a new term here, you have to Mayofy it so that they accept it, right?
Yeah.
What's the hardest piece you've ever had to learn? And what did you do as a musician to get it the way it either needed to be or the way someone could accept it?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, the challenge of being a woodwind player in Los Angeles is that these composers are writing harder and harder stuff because the software allows them to write it. And then they give it to us and we're like, excuse me, you know, that's not playable. Like, we can't do that. That's really hard. So that's a challenge, that they keep raising the bar of what they expect us to be able to play. And in the studio, you're seeing it for the first time. So it's like, it's a little daunting. But I don't know if it's the hardest piece, but a couple years ago, I played on a movie called Babylon. And the opening of the movie, the composer wrote this thing that was pretty challenging. And they sent us the music a week ahead of time. And I was looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if this is for alto saxophone. I think this might have been a mistake. So I played it on soprano, still pretty hard. And then I played it on clarinet. I'm like, even harder. So I looked at the score because he sent me the score too. And I looked at the score. I'm like, I guess he does want this on alto saxophone. It was super hard and super fast. And it kept getting faster. So I'm like, oh my God. Thankfully, since I went to college for saxophone, I know the physics of the instrument. And I was able to invent fingerings and do stuff to be able to manage this whole passage. But it was really, really hard, and it really, I'm grateful that I went to college because it was one of those moments where I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I went to school. And the other saxophone players on the session, when I had to play that, they're like, dude, how did you play that? How did you actually manage that? So it was one of those things where like I really had to sort of find a way to get around that. And then after all that was said and done, the composer was like, yeah, that was great. But it was really, really perfect. I was like, what do you mean? He said, I wanted it to sound sort of haphazard and out of control, like it was really hard. And you played it like it was easy. I'm like, dude, I wish you would have called me a week ago. I could have played it like it was really hard, like it was.
That's a great story.
So the take that's in the movie is me actually sort of screwing the line up, and it wasn't intentional. It was so hard. It was like the fourth or fifth one, and I screwed it up. And he's like, yeah, that's the one. I love that. I'm like, great. Great.
Well, you know, I think that also shows that with, you know, you think about it, he wrote, you know, they're writing in technology. I don't know how you take the human fully out of the music. I'm not sure how you really do that. Someone, you know, Rick Beato just posted a video a couple of weeks about his kids can somehow tell anything that was created with AI through their ears.
Yeah,
Now
I saw that.
I only wish I had ears like that.
Yeah,
but the reality is for someone who's really can tell music, like how do you really take a human out of it? Because that would have been a perfect take, but without you, right? Without what you did. So, you know, it's just interesting how we've reached this point.
But I also think that it's funny because I think the people that are embracing technology are the older people. The business people are doing it because they're cheap and they want to find out how they can make as much money as possible and pay as little as possible. The younger generation, on the other hand, is all about real music. They want to see a real singer. They want to see a real instrumentalist, and they want real stuff, which is why they're buying vinyl and they're going to actual studios where they're recording on tape. Yes, that's right, the word tape. I've seen it happen, and it's fascinating to me that they're the ones who are like, no, I want some real stuff. So I have hope because I think that they're going to be the drivers of the next wave of music, and it's going to be real. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely changed a lot. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people in punk rock lately, and they are raw and real. They're like, forget, just give me 4 chords and a loud amp, right? Yep. So let me get back to where I was going to head, because you've had some exciting times recently. You're probably like me. You don't get back to Rochester all that often, but you got back to Rochester for something absolutely mega. You were introduced to the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. Yeah. Tell me, what was that experience like?
It was really great. You know, they reached. Here's the thing: the background of that is that many friends at home were hitting up the Hall of Fame to say, "Hey, you should induct this guy, Scott Mayo. He's from here. He's done this and that and the other." So there were they were getting hit from a lot of different directions. And so when they finally reached out to me, it was an honor, because I already knew about the Hall of Fame and I know the caliber of people that are in it. So to be inducted and be among that community of artists that are in there, it's pretty heavy. Who thinks that they're going to be inducted into any Hall of Fame, let alone the one from home that has legends in it? Come on. Me and Cab Calloway together? Come on. That's nuts. Who does that?
So, that's probably meant to be. I've known you long enough. This is meant to be. Now, out of that experience, it birthed a new creation for you.
Yeah. So I came home, and, you know, like what happens to me when I go home, I sort of get inspired when I just come home, just come back to Rochester. And I don't usually bring a horn with me. I just come home and just hang with my family and friends. But I always come back sort of energized. And this was no different. So I sat down at the piano because I just had stuff going on in my head, and I just started playing a couple chords. I was like, well, that could be a thing. So then I just started to open up the production and do different things. And I heard a melody in my head, so I went and I grabbed my tenor saxophone and I just started playing. And by the end of the day, the whole song was done. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. So I played it for my mother, and I said, I need a title because I don't know what to call it. So she said, I think you should call it the 5th of May, because that was the day I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, since that was the thing that inspired the whole song. So there you go. So there's the song was birthed. And then we did a video while I was in town as well. So it's been wonderful. It's been really wonderful.
Oh, I think that's great. I think that's absolutely great. What's next on the horizon for you?
Getting the song, the 5th of May, out in front of as many people as possible, and probably doing some shows of my own, which I tend not to do just because I don't have a lot of time. But I think I want to come home. We're talking about coming back to do Jazz Fest next year. So there's that on the horizon, and just continuing to work. I got a couple TV shows that are lined up that I'm going to start playing for. And so keep making music in this beautiful studio that I built, and just enjoying the process.
Great. And by the way, because I don't think many people know, but we might as well give a shout out for this, because not only did you create the 5th of May, you created a musical son. Tell us about him.
Yeah, my son Michael Mayo is pretty killing. And, you know, when I talk about him, I think a lot of people think that I'm just being a proud dad. And though I am a proud dad, as an artist to an artist, he's kind of ridiculous. And he did the new album. He is coming out in October, and he did the overdubs here. And so here I am. I'm just an engineer. I have no equity in this project. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching him sing, and I'm just amazed, like, wow, because now he's a fully formed artist. And the sound that's coming in from that microphone, I'm like, God, he's so good. So he's really, really special. And I love seeing his journey, and I love the music that he's creating. And he's personally challenging to me because he raises the bar, even for me. Like, he raises the bar, and I'm like, I want to be a better composer. because of him. So yeah, he's great. He's great.
Well, and that works well in. I have another question,
mm-hmm.
and this probably has happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have him. It's not every day that the father and the son are musicians together, right? So you probably have one of these things that you've given him, but it's like go back in time type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to give him a piece of advice you may have given your younger self back when.
Yeah.
For any of the young musicians who are watching, what's one of the best pieces of advice that you gave him as a musician to a musician? If I only knew when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Be good, be prepared, and be patient. Just be patient. Your time will come if you're good and if you're prepared. Seriously, your time will come. And I just think that we too often get caught up into I want it now, and it may not be your time. Your time will come when it's your time. And when it happens, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to feel peaceful to your spirit, and you're going to be a blessing to a lot of people. So don't rush the process. Just while you're waiting for things to happen, just keep getting ready. Just keep getting ready. Stay in shape. Because when you get called into the game, it's time for you to play. And that's how I feel. Just be patient, but stay ready. Stay ready.
Nah, that is great advice. Now, people should be out buying your music. You had a solo album, I think. Was it 20?
I
when was
did
it?
an album in 2023 called Meu Brasil. It's my first Brazilian album with Sergio Mendes and Dori Caymmi. My son Michael is actually singing in Portuguese on the song, and a bunch of friends on the record. So yeah, go get that album. And all my albums are on they're all streaming. You can buy those all.
All right. So as I tell everyone, buy the music. Don't rent artistry.
Yes.
Don't rent artistry, because I'll be honest with you, Scott may get 10 million streams a month, but he gets a 32-cent check. Go out and support Scott's musical journey. Support his son,
mm-hmm.
an up and coming superstar that he will be. But go out and support musicians. So with that, though, Scott, I'd like to also share with people who are watching some musicians that you're currently like digging that are earworms for you, or a song or two that you really love, may or may not be in a genre other people know, or they may not be the most popular music, but who are you currently listening to and why?
Oh man, I'm all over the place. You know what I listen to a lot of is Afrobeat music from Africa, in particular Nigeria. I listen to that music a lot, and that, if you see, is the sort of the rhythmic basis of the 5th of May. I listen to that a whole lot when I'm home, in particular when I'm cooking and stuff like that. But I'm all over the place in terms of artists. The thing I do like, because I work with a lot of younger artists, they're always turning me on to new artists. In fact, a girl was in here a couple of days ago. She's a sophomore at BYU. And she and I were talking, and she's turning me on to all these artists I'd never heard of. So I started listening to them, and so I feel like there's so much good music out there. The challenge is, as opposed to when you and I were young, we could just turn on the radio and we could hear it. Now, if you turn on the radio, you're not going to hear that stuff. So you really do have to do some digging to find out these artists and support these artists. There's a young singer named Yeba. I love her voice. Totally, utterly love her voice. I love her music. And so, I just listen to a lot of stuff, and I'm constantly surprised and challenged by how good the music is. It's great. It's really great stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, look, we're a couple of we've lived well.
Uh-huh.
We've lived well, and we're not the kids we once were.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this stuff keeps us young. I've found so many great artists through my concert photography and
mm-hmm.
and working with people on this that there's always something new and interesting to fill your ears with.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last question before we wrap up. You have performed with a lot of artists.
Uh-huh.
You've got a great resume. If there was one person you've not had a chance to be creative with in a studio, and you had a chance to go in and just have a day to create something, who might that be?
Ooh, that's hard. But I have a person, because he's one of my dream artists, and I never got a chance to meet him or work with him. I would love to sit down in the studio one-on-one and write with Marvin Gaye. I would love that. I would love that. That would be amazing.
if we could only turn back the clocks, right?
Man.
But yeah, I'm sure that would be incredible.
So good.
Oh wow, I can hear it. I can absolutely hear it because I know your music. Well, Scott, it has been a pleasure catching up with you. We should not leave so many years in between. And everybody go out, search for Scott. He's on all your socials. He's got you've got Instagram and YouTube. Listen to his music, support him, check out his son for sure. Help the whole family out. And I wish you all the best, and I'm sure we'll see you on TV probably on one of the
that'd be great.
shows pretty soon.
That. Yep.
So we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, absolutely.
Bye-bye.